Christmas. It's the most wonderful time of the year. A time for family, traditions, and celebrating the birth of Jesus in a manger in Bethlehem on December 25th. Except, almost none of that is historically accurate. What if I told you that the traditional Christmas you know is actually a massive historical remix? A mashup of Roman orgies, Norse blood sacrifices, psychedelic mushroom trips, and a marketing campaign by a soda company? Today, we're peeling back the wrapping paper to uncover the hidden secrets of Christmas and find out why we really celebrate it during the darkest days of the year. Let's start with the biggest elephant in the room: the date. If you ask most historians and even biblical scholars, they will agree on one thing: Jesus of Nazareth was almost certainly not born on December 25th. By analyzing clues in the texts, like shepherds being out in the fields with their flocks, which they wouldn't do in the dead of winter, many estimate his birth was likely in the spring or autumn. So, why December? Because the early Christian church needed good PR. In the 4th century AD, Emperor Constantine made Christianity the dominant religion of Rome. But the Romans already had massive, incredibly popular festivals right around the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. They celebrated Sol Invictus, the unconquered Sunday. The idea was that just when the sun seemed to be dying, it began to return. The church realized they couldn't just cancel the biggest party of the year. So, Pope Julius I essentially said, "Fine, keep the party, but we're changing the theme." They co-opted the date to celebrate the Son of God, rather than the sun god. But the date was just the beginning. The way they celebrated was harder to change. If you think your office Christmas party gets wild, it has nothing on Saturnalia. This was the Roman midwinter festival honoring Saturn, the god of agriculture. For a week in December, all social norms were overturned. Courts closed. Schools closed. Masters served their slaves at dinner tables. There was widespread gambling, feasting, and gift-giving. The church adopted the feasting and the gift-giving, but tried to tone down the debauchery. But if you go further north, to Scandinavia, the roots get darker. The Norse celebrated Yule. They believed that during this time, the ghost world was closest to the human world. Odin, the Allfather, would lead a ghostly procession across the sky called the Wild Hunt. To stay safe, people stayed indoors, feasted fiercely, and burned massive logs, Yule logs, to ward off the darkness. The whole chestnuts roasting on an open fire vibe? It started as a way to keep Viking ghosts away. But what about the big guy? The man in red? Surely he isn't a pagan remix? Well, yes and no. The Real Saint Nicholas was a 4th century Greek bishop in modern-day Turkey. He was famous for his fiery defense of church doctrine and his secret generosity, like dropping coins in the shoes of the poor. Fast forward 1,000 years. The Dutch kept his legend alive as Santa Claus. He rode a white horse, wore a bishop's hat, and delivered gifts on December 5th. When Dutch settlers came to America, Santa Claus came with them. But American writers decided he needed a makeover. In 1823, the poem, The Night Before Christmas, changed the game. It ditched the horse for reindeer, moved him to the North Pole, and made him a jolly old elf. But the Santa you know, the big, grandfatherly, Coca-Cola drinking man in the bright red suit? That image was solidified in the 1930s by illustrator Haddon Sundblom for Coke advertisements. Before Coke, Santa wore green, brown, or blue. After Coke, he was brand-compliant red forever. Okay, lightning round on 2 more traditions. First, the Christmas tree. Why do we drag a dying tree inside our house? Almost every ancient culture, Egyptians, Romans, Vikings, used evergreens in winter to symbolize eternal life when everything else was dead. But the modern tradition comes from 16th century Germany. Legend has it Martin Luther was the first to add lighted candles to a tree to simulate starlight. It only became globally popular when Britain's Queen Victoria was photographed with one in the 1840s. And mistletoe? It's a parasitic plant that grows on oak trees. The Celtic Druids saw it as sacred because it blossomed even in winter. It was a symbol of fertility and vitality, hence the kissing. So, where does that leave us? Is Christmas a lie? I don't think so. The hidden secret of Christmas isn't that it's fake. The secret is that it's a survivor. For thousands of years, long before Christianity, human beings felt a primal need during the darkest, coldest, most depressing time of the year to gather together, light fires, share food, and remind each other that the sun would eventually return. The traditions we have today are a historical snowball, rolling through time and picking up pieces of Rome, Scandinavia, Turkey, and 1930s corporate America. It doesn't matter if you're celebrating Sol Invictus, the birth of Jesus, or just the fact that you got a day off work. The why remains the same. We need light in the darkness. And that is a tradition worth keeping. What's a holiday tradition in your family that you have no idea where it came from? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this historical deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more weird history every week. Thanks for watching, and happy holidays!